Okay, so here's the story of arguably the weirdest thing that has ever happened to me. It might be paranormal, it might be unrelated natural phenomena happening concurrently. Either way, it was weird as hell, and it's not something that I think I'm ever going to forget because I keep coming back to it. I typed it all out, so you are going to see me consulting my script periodically, but I did that so that I don't forget anything. I want you guys to hear the full story, no parts omitted or added in at the last minute. Here we go. During the summer in high school and college, I worked for my dad on our family farm. This particular summer, I was in high school. We worked all summer on what we affectionately had dubbed the doghouse, which is an old tobacco barn we were renovating into a cabin. I think this story happened in July, though I'm not entirely sure. The whole thing started on a Thursday. Now, to fully understand what I'm describing, you need to know a little bit of the layout of the farm itself. I've made a quick sketch, admittedly blatantly copied from Google Earth to make sure that it's accurate, which is also available in the description below if you want to follow along as you're listening to the story. So the farm has a really long drive through the trees to actually get up to the part where the cows and whatnot are, which we've dubbed Sleepy Hollow, because it gets so dark at night you can't see your hand in front of your face, no matter how big and bright the moon is. It's really spooky. This drive leads up to the lower pasture and the cow barn on your right. To your left is the primary hayfield. Past the cow barn on your left, there's a shed Dad uses to store miscellaneous stuff. Past that is the equipment shed, also on the left, and the upper pasture on your right. Another storage shed is on the left, next to the equipment shed, and then in a corner of the fence for the upper pasture, you have the doghouse. That's all you need to know for now. I'll describe other aspects as they become relevant. So this Thursday, Dad and I drove onto the farm and up to that first storage shed on the left, where we started loading wood flooring planks into the back of the white Dodge pickup truck that we have. Dad had collected them from either an old one-room schoolhouse or an old one-room church that was being torn down. Either way, it was being torn down, and my dad tends to get stuff for free because he's really good at talking. As we were loading them up, Dad stopped, looked towards the pasture, and frowned. "You smell that?" he said. I sniffed the air. "Smell what?" I asked. "The scent of decay," he said. I tried smelling again, but I couldn't smell anything. Dad told me that he only smelled it when the wind blew across the pasture towards that storage shed. And he said it smelled really strong, like a dead snake. Apparently, dead snakes smell really, really rank. But I shrugged it off because I didn't smell anything, and we kept working. He remarked on it a couple more times. It must have smelled insanely strong to him, but I never smelled it, and it was only when the wind was blowing towards us across the pasture. And only in that exact spot. But nothing else happened that day. So, Friday rolled around. Now bear in mind, we're not working on the farm in the dark. This is daylight, and roasting hot days at that. I think we worked on something else that morning, but I know we worked on the doghouse in the afternoon. Almost every time we passed the shed on the left from the day before, the wind would gust a little, and Dad would frown and say he smelled the dead thing again, or smelled the scent of decay. I'm pretty sure he altered between the two descriptions. The criteria for smelling it were extremely specific. He had to be at that spot, and the wind had to be blowing towards us across the pasture. He didn't smell it 10 feet up or down the road if the wind blew towards us. He didn't smell it if the wind blew from a different direction, and he didn't smell it if there was no wind. I still smelled nothing the whole time. Now, allow me to set the scene for the primary incident for you. My job for the day was sanding down tier poles, technically grinding them at this point. A tier pole is about as big around as a telephone pole, and in a tobacco barn, it's used as a support for the smaller sticks with which the tobacco leaves are tied to. You tie the leaves to the little sticks, you rest the little sticks between two tier poles, and you fill up the barn that way. We were using the tier poles for floor supports so that we could have a second floor in the cabin. I had a hand grinder and safety glasses, which meant I couldn't wear my own glasses, They were in the truck. Dad was in a hole in the ground next to the fence. He was digging the septic tank so that we could actually have plumbing. Inside the cabin was a friend of Dad's. We'll call him Tony for the sake of the story. Tony was working on the electrical wiring for the cabin. He's a real genius with that kind of thing, but he doesn't really do direct orders very well. He's one of those people that you give him the end goal, and he will reach it as long as you let him reach it on his own, in his own way. So Dad's in the hole. I'm off to the side, like around the corner of the building a little bit. I'm kind of in the shade at this point. And Tony's inside. And we were all working on our respective tasks for probably a couple of hours. I don't remember taking a lunch break, so we probably started afternoon. So I think I had stopped sanding the pole I was on, and I headed around the corner of the cabin to get Dad to help me swap out the poles. Because while I could roll them, they're really heavy, and that would be a difficult task for a high schooler at this point. So this is the point at which we, all of us, hear a sound that I don't think I'm ever going to fully forget. It was like a cross between a cow mooing, a bellow, a scream, and a roar, like some kind of a mountain lion, some monstrous thing. It made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Tony appears in the doorway of the cabin, and we all look out towards the pasture. The ground kind of shivers under our feet, and then the whole herd of about 30 cattle comes running up over the hill. They crest it at a dead run. I don't know how much you guys watching know about cows, but cows don't usually run, especially not the whole herd at once. It takes something to get them moving. When you see a stampede in movies and that kind of a thing, those are extreme circumstances. Cows are usually content to just stand around and graze. But this whole herd came running over this hill. They just came into sight. And we have black Angus, so this is just a black mass of cattle following this sound that I have never heard before, and I hope I will never hear again. Dad said that in all the years, and they've had cattle since Dad was a little kid. I don't know if there was a time that he's been alive that he hasn't had cattle. And he has never before and never since heard them make a sound like this. So the herd was chasing something small and brown. I didn't really see any more specifics than that because, again, I'm wearing safety glasses. So even though I think I'd taken the safety glasses off at this point, but even though I'd done that, I don't have my actual glasses on and I'm not wearing contacts. So I see blurs. I had to get details filled in later. So they chase whatever it is down to the fence between the two pastures right below the barn. And then they start milling around, hollering and being pretty distressed. Presumably the brown thing went through the fence or something. At that moment, the wind gusted across the field towards us, and I wish I was making this up. Dad quietly went, "Do you smell that?" And then Tony says, "Yes." At this point, I will readily admit, I was ready to go the hell home. I wanted no part of whatever this weirdness was. I was willing to drive this stupid truck home myself, and I hate that truck with a burning, fiery passion. But Dad looks at me, and he says the last thing that I want to hear. But I know it's coming at this point, because this is a man who cares about his cows. We need to go and find whatever's dead out there. And I know what he's thinking because I'm thinking the same thing. It's one of the cows. There is a dead cow out in this field. And so Dad says, "I'm going to get the loader. You're going to sit in the bucket on the spear, and I'm going to raise you up about 12 feet in the air." Horror movie scenario. I know. Trust me. I was thinking about it. I was picturing my dad getting brutally murdered by something that like came out of nowhere, because it's a really hilly pasture. The farm is technically on a place called Woody's Mountain, which is a very small mountain. It's like an overgrown hill, but it's a hilly structure of the pasture. The landscape is hilly. So I'm just picturing something cresting this hill, killing my dad, and then it's just circling the loader, trying to figure out how to get up to me high up in the air. I did not want to go out. I didn't want to do any part of this. But I walk to the truck, I get my glasses, and I follow Dad to the loader. I'm pretty sure I was shaking the whole time and giggling that kind of hysterical, nervous half giggle that you do when you really can't believe something is happening to you. On the way, I'm pretty sure I asked Dad what was that, because, again, I couldn't see much. He may have volunteered the information himself. Either way, he told me what he'd seen was a smallish creature, like probably roughly about the size of a dog. It was brown. It had a white underbelly, but it didn't look like a deer. Like, we have white-tailed deer in that area, and they always flag their tails when they run. It's just how they run, and they've got the white underside to the tail. And this was not a deer. There was no tail flagged in the air. That's not what they're chasing. He said it tripped once, running from the cows, and they almost trampled it. And then it got down and it did go through the fence. So Dad cranks up the loader. I climb into the bucket, straddle the spear, and he raises me up like 12 feet in the air. It might have been 10. I don't know. I know it was double digits. I know I was really high. And we head into the pasture. We drive across every inch of the upper pasture in these long swipes. I'm looking at the ground. He's looking at the ground. We are trying to spot anything. And Dad tells me, look for anything. We're not just looking for the big stuff. We're not necessarily looking for a big dead cow, even though that's what in the back of my head I think we're going to find. We're looking for anything. We're looking for a dead snake. We're looking for anything that is dead and rotten and just anything that could have caused this smell and this whole weird scenario. And I just knew that over every ridge, I was going to see a mutilated cow with like an eyeball off several feet away from her, and she'd like have her innards ripped out and splayed across the ground, and there would be something hunched over her that would just look up and then lunge at us. And what we found was a whole lot of nothing. The entire pasture, and there isn't even a dead snake. And again, we are looking. This is not new pasture that the cows have just been put into. They have grazed everything down. Cows, they will graze it almost right to the ground. You can see underneath that grass. And this is a frequently, traveled pasture. There's not that many trees in it. This is a lot of detail, I know, but I'm telling you this so that you know, we looked. There was nothing. And weirder still, we're out in the pasture. This is the pasture that the wind is blowing across it towards Dad, and he smells the scent of decay in those two specific places at this point. Even when the wind gusts at us from whatever direction out there, he smells nothing. We're theoretically closer to the source of whatever is dead out there, and he's not smelling anything. We checked up close to the fence, we checked far away from the fence, we checked the entire pasture, all of it. It was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. It was like time had stopped and we were just in this weird bubble of intently staring and looking for something that was out there, and it just felt like something horrible was waiting and lurking over every hill, looking for us or watching us. And we found nothing. So Dad decided we had to check the lower pasture. The lower pasture and the upper pasture are joined at the cow barn, and then there's a little stretch of fence that they share, and then the fence splits, and there's woods between the two pastures. What I'm calling the upper pasture, what I'm calling the lower pasture. There's the woods in between. So theoretically, the wind could still be blowing from something that's in the lower pasture into the upper pasture towards us. Worth checking out. So we scour that pasture as the sun moves towards sunset. It's getting later in the afternoon. I'm starting to calm down at this point, aside from the fact that it's starting to get dark. Well, slowly. But we have the same results. Nothing dead, no smell, nothing. We come back from the lower pasture. Dad parks the loader. I get out. He suggests we go to the local minute market, or gas station with food, basically, and grab a bite to eat, then come back and check the woods between the pastures on the off chance that there's something in there. I'm pretty eager to get off the farm, frankly. I'd rather not come back, but happy to get off of it, so I agree. So we trot back up to the truck, hop in. Dad turns the key in the ignition. The engine turns over, and nothing. He tries again. Same thing. And again. Same thing. This truck has never had a problem starting before, and suddenly it's not starting. At this point, I am freaking out again. I am ready to walk all the way home. That is not a short walk, but I'm ready to hop out of that damn truck and walk all the way home. Everything be damned. I want off the property. I'm done. The truck finally started. Finally. And we got off the farm. We went to the minute market. We got food. We were kind of sitting in the truck, laughing nervously and talking about the whole thing. It was one of those, it felt taboo to talk about it on the farm very much, but we're kind of laughing in the minute market like, what the hell is going on here? What are we experiencing? What is this? We got a call from Mom while we were there asking us where we were, and Dad was just telling her, we'll be back soon. We've got a story to tell you when we get back. Boy, did we ever. So we head back to the farm, despite the fact that I would rather go straight home. At this time, Dad doesn't park next to the doghouse. He drives out into the upper pasture, and he parks kind of on the hillside. So there's a downhill slope to the fence, and then there's the woods and whatnot in there. So we hop out of the truck, and we head down. I'm sticking pretty close to Dad. I'm pretty freaked out. At this point, the sun is setting proper, so the sky's all red and orange. And under the trees, it's starting to get really dark. So as we walk down the hill towards the fence itself, there's this tree. This really old, big tree. And Dad says, "Look," and he points at the tree. What I see are 4 gouges in the trunk of this tree. I've seen what it looks like when a buck rubs his horns on a tree and scrapes off the bark. This is not that. There are chunks of bark ripped off, and there are thinner scratches in the middle. This is something dug claws in and pulled down. Whether it was trying to get up or it was just stretching its foot, I don't know. But these are head height on me. These are like, I'm 5'6", 5'7", so they're about that high in the air. They're over 5 feet in the air. This is not a buck. This is a predator that has stretched its claws in the tree, and it can stretch out as large as I am tall. Those gouges are still there, by the way. I've shown them to friends to corroborate this whole story and say, hey, look, here's the thing that I mentioned. So Dad and I duck through the barbed wire fence into the woods. Again, it's dark. It's dark. We start making our way through the woods, looking in vain, listening, smelling. I'm really freaked out again. It's hard not to be. So So as we walked through the woods trying to find something, anything, Dad said something that I will also never forget. Humans never look up. Yeah, no, I'm looking up at this point, and I'm terrified that there is something in the trees over our heads, but because it's getting dark, I can't really see up there. I don't know if there's something up there. There could be anything up there. So we finally decide it's too dark. We can't see anything. We're going to go home. So we get back out of the woods, duck back through the fence, go back to the truck. This time the truck started on the first try. Thank God. I think if it hadn't, I would have fainted at best, died on the spot at worst. Yeah, but thank goodness it did. I was beyond terrified at that point. We drove off the farm, we drove home, and Mom is inordinately worried about us, asking us why we were out so late. And we say, we're going to feed the animals, we'll get that done, then we'll come back in and we'll tell you what happened, because boy, have we got a story to tell. So we go out, we take care of the animals, we come back in, and Mom is asking again, why were you out so late? And Dad's like, honey, we weren't out that late. It's only 8. And Mom says, no, it's 9. So Dad looks at his watch. In the middle of that jaunt through the woods, after we saw the gouges in the tree, something else that had never failed. My dad's watch stopped. It was just the icing on a particularly spooky cake. Since then, I've researched this stuff, trying to figure out what the hell happened down there. We found out that a really scrawny bobcat had been seen in the area that just didn't look quite right. And we knew that coyotes were in the area, but that's about the most we have. Either one could have been the creature the cows were chasing, but we don't have anything more conclusive than that. One day when I was home a few years later, I mentioned some of the stuff I've been researching to Dad, specifically skinwalkers, because I know that there have been arrowheads found on the farm and whatnot. As far as we know, no Native Americans lived there, but it's pretty certain they probably hunted there. And most skinwalker stories also involve the scent of decay or death. He then told me something that he had never told me before. A week prior to the events of that day on the farm, Dad had killed a crow. I had just learned that crows were one of the creatures associated with skinwalkers, along with bobcats and coyotes. About a decade has passed since then, and to my knowledge, there have been no similar events on the farm. Draw whatever conclusions you want, but that's what I experienced, that's what Dad experienced, and it is one of the weirdest things that has ever happened to me. It's stuck with me, mostly because this story is corroborated by other people. This isn't just me in my own head experiencing things. My dad experienced the whole thing with me, and Tony experienced part of it. Anyway, thanks for listening, folks, and let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this.